Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Ali Murati and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the PEG Experts Forum Professional Content Series, where we will be having a discussion about optimizing web video. So we'll be doing a web video show and tell of sorts with our panelists today and discussing how each of them has conceptualized and implemented their current systems, as well as what it looks like to maintain them. So in other words, how much work is involved to keep these things fresh and up to date. And before I introduce our panelists, I want to welcome anyone who's joining us on the forum for the first time. This is a recurring series, and we hope that you'll take a look at our full collection of content, which is a wide array of blog content, as well as some archived webinar content and recordings of some past workshops that we've done. And that portal is also going to have a place where you can subscribe to notifications about future events like this, or to get articles as we post them when they're brand new. And like I said, I'll share that link with you in the chat here shortly. And also I want to point out that any of you are welcome to contribute to this series as well. As PEG professionals, we are looking to you to showcase your innovations and the work that you do in your communities. So there is also on that page that I'll be sharing a place where you can tell us things that you're doing that you'd like to showcase on the forum. So keep that in mind. If any ideas come to you, we'd love to hear them. Now let's get started with today's panel. I'm going to introduce our panelists first. First we have Kayla Creamer. She is the program coordinator at Billerica Access Television in Billerica, Massachusetts. And she'll be talking to us about her innovative use of some features like file attachments, detailed metadata, and the use of links for optimizing her content and making it, more engaging, and just offering more to viewers to make them want to come back. And next we have Shawn Serre at Pittsfield Community TV and WTBR-FM radio in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. He will be talking to us about this, we're calling it automated web-only pre-roll. So these are web-only pre-roll videos that you're seeing only on web, not on cable. So for video on demand content and live streaming as well? Video on demand. I think just video on demand, I think is what you said. Yeah. And so they're using that for cross-promotion for their shows, events, and acknowledgments. And also with us for the Pittsfield demonstration will be Gabe Russell, who is a video streaming consultant based in Seattle, our first West Coast panelist. And he is the one who worked with Shawn to implement that pre-roll workflow at PCTV. So we'll be taking a look at that. And also from the West Coast, we have Bryan Harley, who's the executive director at CMAC in Fresno, California. And he'll be showing us his awesome website with embedded live streams and dynamic VOD content with metadata. Metadata is also dynamic. They're pulling that directly from their video server, putting it on the CMAC website. We're going to start with Kayla for BATV. And Kayla, if you want to take the screen from me?
Sure.
So first, let's talk about what we're seeing right here.
Sure. So we have VOD for our public, educational, and government channel. Right now I'm just showing our government channel because this is where we're utilizing some of those features that we're going to be talking about. So the way we have it set up is you have your top 12 latest programs, and then we use the galleries for our more regular meetings that we have, and it's set up the same way on our other VOD channels as well. But in this instance we have a section for Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Building Committee, the police department has a show, so there's a section for them. We have a producer who does a show called the Billerica Bugle, and then our town meetings. And then the other thing that we're utilizing is the custom thumbnails in the show records. So for things like our live feed placeholders, I have a custom thumbnail that just says live on BATV. If you don't put some sort of a default thumbnail there, it just says thumbnail on it, which isn't real appealing to people. So I always make sure to make some sort of custom thumbnail for placeholder files as well. And then the other feature that we utilize here, and I don't know if you want me to wait to go into this, but our some of our meetings, like let's see, town meeting recently. Whoops, not the live one. The recording. So I don't know how many people out there are using chaptering for their meetings, but our town meeting we just had over the weekend, and it was 7.5 hours long. They did the entirety of the meeting in one day, and it would have been a lot of video for community members to have to scroll through and figure out where particular articles were talked about. So I don't often chapter the meetings because they're not usually that long, and usually I'm not the one recording them, but this is kind of a strange time, so I'm recording a lot of the meetings. So I went through and chaptered all of the meetings with the article and what the article was about so people can easily click through. And then we're using the embeddable PDF. So for this meeting, I've got the warrant that the town put out for the town meeting, so however many pages this is. And we also utilize the functionality for people to download the agenda. So if somebody wanted, if this text is too small for them to read, or they want to be able to save it for some reason, they can save it right from the VOD page. So that's how our VOD, that's the basic setup of it.
Yeah, and what's really great about what you guys are doing is you're really like using this platform to its fullest. Like, I don't see everyone taking advantage of almost every single thing. Like even on this page, so you mentioned the agenda both being embedded and then also having a link to download it. And we can take a peek later at how someone, like we can take a look at your custom fields on the back end a little bit later. But if you scroll all the way down, another thing I noticed that you all are doing that not everyone is doing is you're taking advantage of these the toggle to other channels at the bottom. So you have both your EDU and your public channel available here, and people can toggle between the three because you have three separate public sites.
Right.
And it looks like you're taking advantage of all these features on all three of them. So. And now that we're on the homepage of, I mean, you can pick any one, I guess, but let's go back and talk about these galleries.
Sure.
So you all have a ton of on-demand content, and so and you can also see how these galleries make it a little bit easier to digest for the viewer as they come to the site, because they're not just going through like a whole big list of everything that's on demand. You have this set up to respond to playlists or save searches?
We do, yeah. So we use the save searches for quite a few things, including some of the auto scheduling in the program schedule, but we're using them for setting up these galleries actually in the back end under the homepage settings. So I forgot to mention, we in the public pages don't display non-BATV produced content. So that stuff shows up when somebody looks at our schedule. We don't get a ton of stuff, particularly on the government channel, that's not produced by our community members, but we do sometimes. And I don't like to clutter because we don't include that stuff on the VOD. I don't like to clutter up our VOD pages with it. So I've actually used the custom fields to kind of pull that stuff out of the searches, and so I have a search for each of the VOD pages that's a government VOD, public VOD, or educational VOD member programs, and that's what it uses to search the slideshow. And then I'm also using keywords in our show ID records to be able to do saved searches and set up these galleries. So again, the Board of Selectmen is just a save search for Board of Selectmen. Same thing with Planning Board, Building Committee, et cetera, et cetera.
And just really quick while we have it open, we could click over to your fields.
Yep.
And see that how you've created the different fields, like for the link, for the agenda.
Sure. So,
like that.
So these are separate from what we have in our show records, which is nice because we can customize the text to be something different. So we just have basic stuff, basic information, who the program is produced by, when it was produced, and if there's a PDF agenda, that will get embedded with the show when it gets uploaded to the VOD. And then for the government VOD, we have a download the agenda at, and that's a link, so you can set this to be any number of things, but we want it to be a link for people to download. So everything is pretty customizable within this. Our public page show fields looks a little bit different because just for whatever reason, I've decided not to make, I mean, we don't have a lot of PDFs that get embedded with that, with those files, so I didn't bother to do a download option with those, but we do have an embeddable PDF, and we'll get in a little bit to where we're using non-agenda PDFs on some of the pages, but it's the same basic idea, and on the 3 public pages, we have a description of produced by and a produced on field. So other than that, you know, everything is pretty much the same. It's just that the government VOD is the only one that we link to the PDFs because typically people are probably going to want a copy of an agenda, but not most of the other stuff that we would post.
And do you ever use the links for like downloading video or anything like that?
You know, I haven't used them very much for this, so we also use archive.org for backing up a lot of our video content. So usually what we do, I do a lot of social media stuff for the station as well, so I usually try to drive people to our VOD because the playback of the videos is faster on the VOD than it is through archive. But if somebody's looking to download a file for something, we usually direct them to the file over on archive.org for that.
Okay. So let's talk about how this all came about.
So this was not in place. We had a different server when I started, and so this was all totally new. We had to kind of start from the ground up on this. And our website, I'll be the first one to tell you, and everybody in the office will tell you that I'm usually the first person to complain about this. I am not a fan of our website. We use Weebly, which isn't really an ideal platform for what a public access center does. So, you know, it makes it hard for us to integrate a lot of media content and have it look nice. Our live streams are even kind of, it's really clunky to get to them. They're in there, but the way they're in there, and I don't manage our website, but the way they're in there is kind of, we had to use a roundabout method to do it. So, the easiest way to deal with being able to put our schedule online, to put our video content online, and to put our streams online was to use the public pages. And you'll notice that the public pages, the color scheme and everything kind of matches what's going on with our website. So I think the average person who's visiting our site from the community probably doesn't even have any idea that they're going to a different page, so to speak, when they're coming over to one of our VOD pages, which is nice. And it's pretty much set it up and forget it. Like, I really don't touch any of the back end stuff now that it's all set up. Occasionally I go in there and tweak something if I need to, but for the most part it's pretty much just everything is done through the regular cablecast programming interface. So it was a little bit of setup, but not much, and I haven't really had to do anything with it since.
So day-to-day workflow is basically just your programming workflow. Like you do what you do with your scheduling and fill out the show record, and then this just happens.
Yep, it's pretty automated.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the stuff that you're doing elsewhere, like you're tracking engagement and also just back and forth with social media.
Sure.
They know that you handle that at your station too. So
sure.
how are you engaging folks with social media, and then just how are you taking a look at your engagement overall?
Sure. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible because this could
Okay.
be a whole other talk on its own. So I manage all of the station's social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, although I don't do as much over there. So like I had mentioned previously, I try to drive people to our VOD for the most part because the video playback's faster. So this is our Facebook page, and you can see um, this is actually a link to the VOD. I use Bitly for shortening up our links. This is actually our town meeting link to the VOD, and so there's a couple of things going on here. So I can track how many times people have clicked on our various links through Bitly, but also we're using the Google Analytics through the public pages and the metrics. It's been a while since I've set them up, but I think it was as simple as setting up a Google Analytics account. They give you a code for each of the public pages, and you put that into the ID field for the appropriate page. So now I can come over here, and I won't pretend to be an expert on Google Analytics. There is so much information here that I don't even know what half of it is that I'm looking at most of the time. But one of the things that I find really useful is I can tell where most of our traffic is coming from to our VOD. So this is the analytics for the government public page, and I can see that in the last month, 60% of our traffic has come from social media. And if I actually click on that, it will tell me specifically what platforms. So the vast majority of that has been through Facebook, although we have had a few people from Twitter. So again, there's a ton of content here, and some of the content would probably scare some people because you can find out all kinds of demographic information, but I find it really handy to know where people are finding out about our content on the VOD and how they're getting there and what stuff they're viewing. So you know, this is really great, and like I said, it was really easy to set up. Once we set up a Google Analytics account, you just put the ID in here, and it just continues to monitor the traffic on the website and compile data for you. So if you are somebody who likes stats like I do, I would highly recommend setting that up and utilizing it. And I have to do a quarterly report and an annual report for programming, and I was able to throw all kinds of information towards my bosses that was way beyond what they typically expect, but that's because I was able to get that data from the Google Analytics plugins.
And final question, what is next for you? Like, what are your goals for expanding or adjusting what you do now?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm not fond of our current website, and I know that my boss is not either. We've had some discussion about this, and we're in the very early stages, but we're talking about making a transition to something else, potentially WordPress. So I would like to see a WordPress-based site with more integration into the site using the APIs, which I know we're going to hear a bit more about in a few minutes. I would love to see the schedule be integrated. The public pages are great, especially if you're like us and you don't have a site that makes it real easy, or like I have a decent amount of web design knowledge, but I'm not an expert by any means, and I think it would probably be over my head to figure out how to set up APIs and those sorts of things. So for me, the public pages are great, but I would love to have a site where that stuff is integrated. I was looking at CMAC's page earlier, and I really like what they're doing, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when we get to their presentation. But my hope is that that's something that we'll see maybe a few months to a year down the road, potentially. And I think I did forget to show, this was one of the
Oh
non-agenda
yeah.
embedded PDFs. So this is a series that the Billerica Council on Aging is sponsoring called Noteworthy Music, and it's not produced by somebody in Billerica, so it's not something that we put up on the VOD, but they have a program that they send us every week with their file, and so I embed that so people can find out more about the music that's being performed in that if they want. And also the Billerica Police Department, one of their shows, Bill West, who's the officer who hosts it, gave me this massive document that he wanted all of this text added to their show, and I mean that's a lot of text to put on screen. So I said, how about instead we make this an embeddable PDF and we'll put it on the website with the video, and people can refer to that there if they want to, because there's just so much text here, and they talked about a lot of it during the show, so it didn't really make sense to put all that text on the screen. So I know I'm going a little bit out of order, but those were two examples I was going to show that I forgot about that are not agenda embedded PDFs. So you can use them for other things. We've talked about potentially for our sports programming, potentially doing something for sponsors that would go in there with the games. So it could be a flyer, or if a sponsor had a coupon for their business or something that we could potentially put in there, or a compilation of sponsor logos or something. There's a lot of different ways that it can be used that we are not yet utilizing the PDFs for that sort of thing, but it's something that we've talked about. We are using the PDFs in other ways that are not agendas for government meetings. So it's a great way to put supplemental material up with a video as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so great about what you're doing here is like you're looking at what is there, and really figuring out the most innovative ways to get the most from it. And you know, one thing I'll point out here is, and I know this isn't necessarily supported on all browsers, but in Chrome here you can see that if you have a link in this PDF, that the link itself will show up as a live link as well. So you know, you wouldn't necessarily want to rely on that if it was an ad, but most browsers do show those as clickable links. So it's another way that you can have additional materials for each of your video on demand files. So thank you very much, Kayla. We're going to, I know we did have a few questions come in during your presentation, but I think that a lot of them would be good to ask the whole panel. So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to those.
Sure.
And we're going to get to Shawn and Gabe. Look at what they're doing at PCTV.
Great. Hello. Thanks, Michelle. It's great to be here with you today.
Good to have you. I'm excited to look at this. So Shawn first showed me this, oh my gosh, when? I want to say it was at the ACM Northeast conference
In Portland?
In Portland, yeah.
I think so.
And I was like, this is so cool, and we have to tell people about this. And then when I reached out to you about it, you said that Gabe was the one that actually made it happen. So of course we had to bring him on as well to look at it. So what you all are doing is taking, so the same public site that Kayla was showing, you're using that for your VOD and your live streaming, but you've added a little extra element on your VOD, which is this little pre-roll. And it's something that you can do normally with your video server by just adding a reel to the front of a file, but then that's going to show up. Sorry if y'all are getting that loud engine in the background. My window is open because it's hot in here. So if you were to do that with the reel and have that, you know, just attached to the show, then that reel is going to show in every instance. It's going to show on your cable channel, on your VOD, on your OTT, or wherever you're playing that video back. But what you've done is you've created a pre-roll that shows on web only. And as many of you know, that's like really key because there's some things that you can't show on your cable channel, but that you could show on your own website. So I want to take a look at that and see how it works.
Okay. Yeah, and I think what you said there is the key, that we didn't want to necessarily have to be connected to putting it on every show reel, and we know that we would after a while forget about doing that, or it would be just too cumbersome. So we were looking for a way to put a promotional video before everything that anyone saw when they reached our video on demand site. So I guess I'll share my screen here and show you what that looks like with sound, hopefully. So this is our main website, and what we do here is, this is a WordPress site. It's actually managed by one of our employees here at PCTV. And you can see we're advertising our live stream here at the top of this screen, PCTV Select. But I'll just scan down here, and as we go through, we get to this section here where we're talking about watching our 3 channels. And our public channel is called Access Pittsfield, our education channel is called Pittsfield ETV, and our government channel is called CityLink. And so when people want to go ahead and find video on demand or search for a show or something like that, they would click on one of these links. And hopefully this will bring us quickly here. And you're still seeing this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's just pick this committee of the whole video here. And I tried to pick one that, let's see, I think I had one before. Here was one with an agenda also. And I wanted to mention that we were using that too. And it's been a very nice feature. I loved what Kayla was just showing a little while ago with the detail that she's been doing. But anyway, so if someone reaches this part of the site and they want to start playing the video, they'll click here. And then it'll...
Preliminary matter. This is City Council President Peter Marchetti, Chair.
And then the video starts. So basically what we've done there is we've made people watch a mandatory 15-second video before their content starts. We eliminated the idea of skipping that pre-roll video or scanning ahead. Those were 2 things that we had to sort of figure out in the process, because we wanted to make sure that that they got the entire amount of content at the beginning. We also decided to keep it very short, because we know that people's tolerance for long videos before the thing they want to actually watch would probably scare a lot of people away. So we decided to keep it short. And it's a rotating possibility of getting 3 videos. So that was one that you saw there. And if I go to another tab here and hit play, let's see what happens. Hey, we got a different and then it will start that one. So basically the idea is that, and I'll just stop that and come back to the screen here for you. The idea there was that people are kind of used to seeing some promotional content before the video on demand that they desire to see. So we were hoping to capture that moment where they're a captive audience essentially, to get some further information out to them, whether it's our promotional information or some other content. That's what we were shooting for.
Yeah, so it's like pre-roll roulette, basically.
That's right. And I suppose if you really wanted to target one message, you could make all 3 videos the same so that they would definitely get the same message every time. But yeah.
And so you have your own like separate interface where you load in what short videos you want in those spots?
Yep, it's actually, and again, it's kind of a off-label kind of solution that we concocted here when we realized that we couldn't do exactly what we wanted, right through the UI. And I know Gabe is going to talk more about exactly how he did it. But basically what we would do is the file level on the VOD server has a particular folder where we drop MP4 videos, and we just rename them as 1, 2, and 3. So whatever their titles were, we just make a copy, we put it into the folder, and then the system will grab and play one of those three every time you click a new video on demand.
And tell me, what kinds of things have you used those spots for at this point?
Right now, it's really just promotional for PCTV. So it's, it gives you the Facebook page. It, kind of gives you a nice little warm up to the video to say, hey, this is being provided by Pittsfield Community Television, because sometimes people are just quick and they're trying to find something. They don't realize who's providing them the content. So we take an opportunity to introduce them to that. And down the road, there's other uses for it, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Awesome. So, Gabe, we've come to you. We want to hear how you made this happen.
Yeah, so when Shawn first approached me with this, we started looking into how Cablecast works, and I was happy to discover that the video player that's used within Cablecast on the website is based on Video.js, which is a really common open source video player used across the web, very well supported, and has a great ecosystem of developers and users. So I already had some experience with it from some previous projects, so it was relatively easy for me to customize a plugin that would insert the pre-roll, override the Video.js existing logic with our own logic, and point to these three possible video files. So we could have generated a couple different solutions there, depending on the channel, show different pre-rolls or things like that. But we just decided to start with something simple, which was just files that can be slotted in. And then Cablecast makes it easy to slot in your own player in place of the default Video.js player. So we just dropped our player in on top of that, and it worked really well.
I think that's really, really cool. And Shawn, I know you do have some plans for the future. Can we hear about that from you or from both of you?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about immediately when we started, hatching the plan for this was that in the future, we would need to maybe monetize somehow the content that we have. As all of us know, in the PEG world, we're mainly funded by franchise fees, and those are, they have kind of a bleak future in some ways. So we said, well, maybe we can prepare ourselves a little bit for that future and make some avenues ready. So that would be certainly something where we would add some sponsored content, some underwriting or something like that, and make it attractive to a company or more than one company in the area who could potentially support that entire video on demand feature of PCTV. And, I think that we've got to give ourselves as many opportunities like that as we can in the future. And that just looked like a good way to start.
Yeah, and it looks really good too, as implemented. It looks very professional. And I'm sure we're going to have some questions for you all at the end, I'm sure. But we'll go ahead and leave it there for now, and we're going to go over to Bryan and take a look at his website.
Again, I'm Bryan Harley. I'm the executive director. We're a public education government channel in Fresno, California. And this is a WordPress-based website, and we're using a plugin that was developed by Ray Tiley, who I'm sure a lot of you know, senior engineer at Tightrope. And basically, it takes everything we put into Cablecast and syncs it into our WordPress database, so that we can sort of have greater control over how the programming is displayed on our site. So we have this little carousel section up on the top, which is a part of WordPress. It has nothing to do with Cablecast. This is just how we post news related items to our website. And what's great is you have Cablecast data and programming living side by side with our traditional website. So I can click to, any page, like become a member, and I'm just staying entirely within, our website. I can go to our watch tab and go to one of our live streams, and I'm not navigating away from this into, the Cablecast public site. I'm staying, completely within our website. And so we've been able to do some cool things with this. For example, I can click on any one of these programs here. This is a public meeting from just last night. And I have access to the video player as well as other metadata related to the show. So description of the show, the date, the length, category, and who produced it. And what's great is I can click right on the producer name and then be taken to a page that shows other shows that the producer has created. Or I can click on this category and go to the government category and see all the government related videos. So it's nice that we have these sort of category pages as part of it. And another thing we implemented here at the bottom was related videos. So it can recognize that we're within the government category. And so it automatically gives you the 3 latest videos from the government category. And I can hit this button down here and load more videos onto the page if it cooperates with me. There it goes. And so it's just a quick way to, catch the viewer's attention, if they're done with this video or they're looking for other stuff to watch, keep them on the website and engaged with other content that is available. So that's a quick look at that.
Yeah, and it looks really awesome. It looks very seamless. So let's talk about what your goals were when you started to put this together.
Sure. So goal number 1 really was to have this seamless integration. We wanted the visitors to our website to not have to click and go to another website with another look and feel, like the public site. We wanted to have it all integrated in the same place. And that just gives us, greater control, again, how things look, how information is presented. And so that was the number 1 goal. Second goal was, we want this integrated look, but we don't, we still want a simplified process for our programming coordinator. We didn't want him to have to enter show information on Cablecast, but then also have to enter that information on WordPress. So we wanted to sync that information from Cablecast to WordPress. Just like Kayla was describing her workflow, everything is entered into Cablecast like you normally would do, and it gets automatically synced to our website. We don't have to do any other steps really. And that's all thanks to, as I mentioned, the WordPress plugin that was developed by Ray Tiley, which you can get by going to github.com/trms/wp-cablecast. And all of the files, you do have to be somewhat familiar with WordPress in terms of how WordPress plugins work, but you can download the plugin files and upload it to WordPress, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, and I think folks can kind of see, we've seen 2 other public sites, standard public sites before this, so you can kind of see what elements are being pulled in from the standard site to populate this branded site. And some of it looks a lot like it still does in the public site, but some of it you've really highly stylized to look, like you said, seamless with the design that you've got here for your WordPress site. So Yep. It doesn't look like someone just dropped an iframe into a page. Like, it really does look
right
and feel like one site.
Definitely. It is fully integrated, yeah.
Yeah.
All of our different on-demand categories. These are all categories that were just created within Cablecast and get synced here. And then the producer information, that's all producer information that comes directly from Cablecast.
Have you had any feedback or other ways that you're hearing from the community about what you're doing here?
Yeah, we get really good feedback. just how easy it is to locate programming on our website. I mean, it's the first thing you sort of see is this list of the latest. And I think we're showing, whatever the 16 latest shows. And again, there's a load more button here at the bottom to load more content in. We have search front and center right here. So it's easy to just type in something, search for it, and it pops right up. The search results are sorted by relevancy, but we can also sort them by date. If you're looking for the latest Clovis Unified School Board meeting, there you go. So those are the kind of comments we get from people who are using the site. Also from our members, they really like that they have their own personal page where they can view all of their content. For example, we'll take Dawn and Rochelle Franklin. I can just click on their name and here's their own page. They can go and share this URL and when you visit, everything they've ever produced that's available on demand is going to be right here, ready to go. So that's something that our members really enjoy having.
That's awesome. And are you tracking analytics or views?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah, so we, similar to Kayla, we use Google Analytics. And if you're familiar with WordPress, it's easy to implement Google Analytics just like you would on the public site. Just a matter of getting that little piece of code they give you and making sure it shows up on every page. We also use a video SEO plugin so that when you do a search in Google and one of our videos pops up, it actually shows that it's a video on Google, and it's not like it's just a regular web page, but it actually shows that there's a video attached to it. It shows the video thumbnail and it pulls in that video metadata as well. So it's just nice to kind of have that control when it's all on your own website.
And is that's something you're doing through WordPress?
Yeah, there is another WordPress plugin called Video SEO that we use to set that all up.
Awesome.
And that's the great thing about WordPress. I mean, WordPress is it runs 35% of the websites on the internet use WordPress, so it's very popular. I think of all the websites on the internet that use content management systems, so CMS, 60% of CMS is WordPress CMS. So they have a pretty good chunk of the market share. And that means there's lots of support out there. There's lots of developers. If you have an issue with WordPress, you can do a Google search and you'll get a ton of results. So it's very well supported, has a big community of users, lots of different plugins and themes available.
Awesome. Now we have some time here. I want to dive into these questions. I did notice one in the chat that I'll go ahead and address because Kayla, I think you have the page pulled up. Melissa is asking where the analytics ID goes in Tightrope. So I think, do you still have the Cablecast page pulled up where we can show them?
Yep. So if you're in the system settings under channels and you pick whichever channel you want to add it to, I'll pick the public. Click on public site, and the last tab is Google Analytics ID. So once you set up your Google Analytics account and it generates that code for you, you just copy and paste it in there and hit save.
And which is, like, as Brian mentioned, like having the code on every page, this just does that for you on your, if you were using the standard public site. So I hope that answers your question. Folks are wondering, is anyone using third-party hosting for public downloading? I know, Kayla, you mentioned the Internet Archive, or probably the Community Media Archive.
Yeah, so we have our own collection, but that also gets put into the Community Media Archive. So John Hauser helped us set that up a long time ago. Well, actually, this is the second station that I've been using archive.org with, so I undertook a major archiving project with the previous station I worked at, and then I took one on at this station. But yeah, that's where we're sending people, if they want the downloads of any of our programs. It converts into several different formats, so people can choose whatever one is appropriate. But we don't direct people to download files off the VOD. I don't know if there's any particular reason. That's just how we've always done it. We send people to the VOD to watch files in real time, and we send them to archive for downloading files.
Anyone else doing anything with video hosting off the video server?
No, I mean, we're just doing the Reflect service, and that's been working out really well for us.
For those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a CDN or a content distribution Reflect service. So it's not a true cloud hosting, but a sort of bandwidth management service that you can get with your Cablecast server, so that you can have more viewers and not have it tax your network too much. So you're just relying on views on the site. You're not letting people actually download the video anywhere. So just hosting on the server.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I assume that if they're smart enough, they can figure out a way to download it from there also.
And there is a way to provide a download link, but not everybody wants to do that.
Right.
We are using some third-party hosting, so I can share my screen again and kind of show that real quick. But see, I could find a particular show called This Town. Yeah, so if we go to view any one of their videos, they prefer us to link to their YouTube page rather than embedding our own VOD player. So we use custom fields in Cablecast to do this. So we just need to know the ID of the YouTube video, and we put that into a custom field. And our website, when it loads up this page, checks that custom field and sees is there an ID in there? And if there is, it will serve up the YouTube embedded player. And and if there's not a YouTube ID associated with it, it will default back to the regular Cablecast VOD player. So that's one way we've been able to integrate third-party players.
Shawn, you wanted to answer the question about what video server you're using.
Yep, so we are using the VIO system, but this particular solution that Gabe has brilliantly come up with for us does not, I believe, require that particular server. So, for example, this particular thing runs on the VOD server, not through or requiring the VIO.
And then a follow-up question. It's anonymous. I'm not sure who you are, and I'm not sure what your question means. Do you know what they're asking? So it's not something you can't do with just Cablecast?
I think what they mean is, so it's not sort of a built-in feature of the UI as far as running a pre-roll video. It is a custom solution that we had to build, but it's partly customizable through the UI. So yes, you can't just sort of switch it on and make it work at this point, but that it's possible to do. Yeah, and we are not actually running a separate VOD server for those. They are played, as Gabe mentioned, through the is it Video.js, Gabe?
Right, and but the actual pre-roll files are served from the same server that's serving the rest of the content.
Right.
So it's one VOD server, and those pre-roll videos are hosted on the video server, but they're triggered by something else.
Right.
Yeah, the player loads the videos from the pre-roll player loads the videos the same way that the regular player does, so that it's all coming from the same server.
That answers your question. Bryan, you were going to answer Jessica's question.
Yes. So the question was, is this programming compatible with existing WordPress sites? So I'm assuming you mean WordPress themes, and yes. So you don't necessarily need to be a WordPress expert to use this functionality, as long as you can figure out how to download the plugin files and upload them. This will work with any WordPress theme. There's no extra coding or development that you need to do. It'll work right out the box. And I could share just real quickly our WordPress, the back end of our WordPress site. So if anyone's familiar, this is the administrative panel for WordPress. So once you've set up the plugin, you have a little box down here that says Cablecast settings. And you just type in the URL for your Cablecast server. And then it automatically starts syncing shows. See, it's telling me right now there's 38 shows out of 238 shows that still need to be synced. And so we have it set up to just talk to the Cablecast platform about every 30 minutes, and it syncs any changes over to WordPress. And then you have a little tab here called shows. And this is where all your shows from Cablecast show up in WordPress. And so that's kind of what that looks like.
I want to answer this question from Carson about government pages being split up into separate government entities. So if you're talking specifically about the platform that you've seen here, Carson, I think there's two ways that you could segment that content using just the standard features, which would be to either create separate public sites for each of the government entities, which is possible. You can have as many public sites as you want with Cablecast, and then you can brand them separately. And as we saw in Kayla's presentation, you can toggle between those. You can have it show up at the bottom that you have separate public sites for each one, and people can go back and forth. Another option would be to have them all in a single public site, but then separate them using the gallery, like we also saw in Kayla's presentation, where you would just have them all be basically a separate saved search on the back end, so that each gallery, that as people scroll down on the home page, would be segmented for each of the different entities. So I don't know if either of those options are along the lines of what you were thinking. If you have further questions on that, you can put that in the question box. That would be the closest thing to tabs. And now let's see. I'll put this out to the panelists. What is the benefit for you of using these platforms versus free ones like YouTube or Vimeo?
If you want, I can kind of address some of that. So at my previous job, we had used a platform called Blip TV for a while, and we were suddenly given notice that Blip no longer wanted public access channels on their platform, and all of the content was removed within, I think, a few weeks of that. So I've been particularly cautious about not hosting all of our content in just one place, but also not relying on services such as YouTube and Vimeo, because there's nothing that says at some point down the road they can't go, well, we no longer want to host your content here anymore, and then you lose that platform. So using the VOD pretty much guarantees us that somebody else can't come along and decide to pull all of our content. But as I mentioned, we also put our content onto archive.org, and the likelihood of them pulling our stuff is pretty slim. Our youth programs is using YouTube to put up some of their stuff. The other issue I have is that despite trying to educate our producers not to use copyrighted music in their programming, we do sometimes have people who do that, and you can run into more problems with that on YouTube than you can on some of the other platforms. So again, I just don't like relying on any one platform. particularly a paid service, because after having dealt with the blip experience of having to pull all of the programming that we had up there off to put somewhere else, I just don't want to go through that again. So that's why we aren't relying solely on free services. I don't know if anybody else can speak to any of their experiences or decisions for what they're using.
I would definitely concur with what Kayla said. I'm not a big fan of putting a lot of work into putting video on demand content on a platform that we don't control, because I'm thinking of all the work that goes into it, and all of a sudden, at the flick of a switch, they say, well, I'm sorry, can't use you anymore. And then you're scrambling. So I'd much rather use, the tightrope system that we have, and that we have, pretty much full control over, to decide what goes up and what doesn't. And I don't have to worry about anyone else's terms of service but my own.
We do have a YouTube channel, and but we sort of use it just for staff created programming only. So we don't upload member generated content to our YouTube channel. I do think it's still important to be on YouTube, because it's the second most used search engine on the internet, and it's not even really a search engine. It's just a video sharing site, but it's incredibly popular. And so I think there's for that reason, it's important to be where the eyeballs are. So that's why we post video on YouTube and Facebook, and wherever platforms that we have an audience.
And actually, let me tag on to that also, Brian, and say that we've done the same thing with specific staff videos or things that we need to, direct to people. And we use a lot of Facebook Live video, mainly for the social connection and for the reach. Because certainly when you're trying to get something to go viral, there's nothing better than reaching thousands and thousands of people and have it pop up in their feed. It's just a matter of, at the end of the day, do we want to direct people to, something that ultimately will be there consistently when they need it, versus sort of like, shooting up the rocket and saying, hey, watch this.
Right.
And that's, so it's, I guess it's just different purposes for different things.
Well, and I think that's why it's good to have both. And that's why we have a website too, where we have all of the content available there, not just staff created, but members as well. And we still encourage our members to create their own YouTube channels and to create their own Facebook pages and share their content there.
How much content do you keep on your VOD regularly? That's for everyone.
We keep everything. So everything that's locally produced. Yeah, so if it's anything outside the area, I think like Kayla was saying, we don't make that available on demand, but everything else we do. And we're committed to keeping everything available for as long as possible.
All right.
I would chime in on that as well and say that we keep as much possible available. We've been doing video on demand of some kind since 2006 through Tightrope's systems, and it gave us an early opportunity to explore some of that. Some of those early videos were in the WMV format, which is a very old video format at this point, and we haven't rebuilt some of those as of yet, but anything new and modern is all there and available.
Do you want to respond on that, Kayla?
Sure. I mean, we're the same as everybody else. We keep everything. We do also put our stuff on archive.org, so if for some reason we got to a point of not having enough space and had to remove some things, it would still be available online. That is one of the other things, because I had mentioned that we started with a different server when I first started at BATV, and we actually kind of had to start over from scratch when we switched over to Tightrope, so we lost all of the VOD content that we'd had on our previous server, which wasn't real high quality anyway, because that was an old server and it was all low res files. But we do keep all of our content that's produced in-house up on the VOD, and we'll do that as long as we have space. I forget exactly how large the storage is on our VOD. I want to say it's something like 8 terabytes, and the files I think get compressed down for web optimization, so they're probably pretty small by the time they get transcoded. So I imagine that it's probably going to be a while before we would fill that up, but if we had to start deciding what had to stay and what had to go, it's not like that content's not available online somewhere else to direct people to.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again on the next PEG Experts Forum. Have a good afternoon.